It hasn't clicked on yet.
Okay, because I can put my hair right. Look at birds off. Jeez, I like this wide berth I got here. All my things are hanging up. Oh, that's even worse. Jesus. So the trick is if you want to look at the computer, you're not so crazy. Are we live? We're live.
Fantastic.
Hi, Gabrielle. How are you?
Joe. I'm great. How are you today?
I'm swell.
Well, thanks for joining me.
I think we've got questions
Excellent.
from people for our grants for veteran services.
I'm certainly hoping so, because that would be exciting to answer some GBS questions
Right.
today.
Hello.
So first we'll start with introductions. My name's Gabrielle Owens. I'm the General Counsel here at the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs. And Joe, you are?
I'm Joe DeVito. I'm the Outreach Director here at Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs.
Well, thank you again for joining me today. It's a
Thanks
pleasure
for having
having you with me.
Right on.
So we're going to get started by going through a few background items regarding the grant that is in the solicitation that we want to draw your attention to, and then we'll jump into a question and answer session. You'll put your questions into the chat feature, and then we'll read the questions for the whole group, and then Joe or I, or both of us, will answer the question. We also ask that since we introduced ourselves, if you could introduce yourself through the chat feature and put in your name and the organization that you work for that would be applying for the grant. So we really appreciate that. It just helps us know who's on the call. We will have a second of these question and answer sessions for the Grants for Veteran Services, and that will be May 1st, also at 11 o'clock. And you can certainly join that one as well if you have any additional questions that didn't get answered today. So just by way of highlights from the solicitation, the grant award amounts this year will range between $10,000 and $75,000. Previously, we had the number up to $100,000 that you could apply for and potentially receive, but please note that this year the cap is $75,000. I alluded to the important date of the next Q&A session, and that again is May 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The most important date is May the 15th. That is when applications are due. Everything must be submitted digitally through the IDVA website. No emails will be accepted this year as we have accepted in previous years. If you need assistance submitting it digitally, please try to do that in advance so that you aren't trying to submit that on the last day. Because if you do have technical difficulties and need to reach out to us to resolve those, you will need to do that in a timely fashion, because being late for any reason, including technical difficulties, will not make your application timely, and it will not be scored if it is late. Then the other important date that I want to highlight from the solicitation is May 24th. That is when we're going to send out the award letters, and that will be both award letters and denial letters so that organizations know whether they were denied a grant or not. Some of the eligibility criteria that we always like to point out is applicants have to be a nonprofit organization recognized by the IRS, and every organization must be registered with the Indiana Secretary of State. We have 6 purpose areas for the grant. They are highlighted and spelled out on page 6 of the application. I wanted to draw attention to number 6, which is preventing veteran suicide. That is a relatively recent addition to the Indiana Code, so therefore it's a relatively recent purpose area. I'm gonna ask Joe if he'll speak to the efforts the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs is engaging in regarding preventing veteran suicide, and his comments and remarks might spark some ideas from them on the call. Joe, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Gabrielle. I appreciate that. So we do have some great programming going on right now here at IDVA. One of our first and foremost is our Indiana Governor's Challenge for preventing suicide among service members, veterans, family members, and veteran caregivers. So this is a wonderful program that is getting initiated throughout the state. There's a bunch more you can learn about it at our website, in.gov/DVA. You can learn more about our Indiana Governor's Challenge and those opportunities there. I think it's also great that this was added into our GBS as well. Suicide prevention is, it's first and foremost in our mind. It's the leading cause of our Governor's Challenge, but we want to make sure that we're getting that out across all of our channels and opportunities. This is why we wanted to get it involved with GBS as well. So suicide prevention for veterans really runs the gamut of quite a few things. In our Indiana Governor's Challenge, we also have a grant opportunity that's open right now. It's our Indiana Governor's Challenge grant, party group grant opportunities. If you go to our website, which I think you probably have if you found us here today, but you'll see front and center it says IDVA grant opportunities. From there, there's those two sections. One is this GBS, which is our fourth or fifth.
It's been many years. I'm gonna say 5.
It's been great. So this is our standard program that's running strong, but we had the opportunity with funding to also do some grants under the Governor's Challenge. So one of the differences between the two grants is our current GBS that we're talking about now, and programming that we do, is programming that's directly affecting and working toward the veteran community in Indiana. When I say veterans, those are former members of the armed services who are residents of Indiana.
Yes.
And this is the Indiana definition of a veteran,
Yes.
which is not the same as the federal.
It is not.
And I think our Indiana provides an opportunity for us via you folks to provide services to our Indiana National Guard veterans
Yes.
much more thoroughly than under the federal definition.
Absolutely.
So let's keep that in mind, as we don't have any active duty military bases in Indiana, but traditionally a top 5 population of National Guard.
Yes.
So we are a big National Guard state. And one of the differences when we talk about suicide prevention is the GBS is intended for programming directed toward veterans. Under our Governor's Challenge program, we are looking to make sure that we're contacting and working toward helping veterans, active duty members, their family members, and their veterans caregivers.
Yes.
Who are key groups that we want to make sure that we're not only disseminating information to, but providing that suicide prevention. So if somebody is thinking about programming towards family members and caregivers, know that other solicitation is out there.
Yes.
And then as far as both of them go, to talk about suicide prevention, our priorities of suicide prevention in line with our Governor's Challenge are number 1, finding veterans.
Yes.
Finding those family members, finding those caregivers, finding them, interacting with them, and finding out those ways of communication. We want to identify everybody that we can. Some people ask us for that big master list of all the veterans.
Yes.
We don't have that. We're trying to compile it and we can get all the help we can, but we want to identify them, and then we want to screen them for risk factors, right? That's one of the most important things. So identifying and screening is priority group 1. Priority group 2 is really it's curating connection. It's creating connection. It's what is the term is called upstream prevention. And that's interacting with folks before they get to a final phase, a final thought of suicide. If you can interact with them before that and kind of bring them to a different course, they may not have ever known they were going to get there, but you have prevented something with that upstream prevention. And one of the biggest parts of that is connecting folks to each other and to their community and to groups and just removing them from isolation or feelings of isolation.
So would a good example of that be when somebody loses their job? That loss of a job could put them on the path to ultimately inflicting harm to themselves or committing suicide. So by engaging them in that connectivity area, when they lose their job and helping them get a job, then they never end up on the path to suicide.
Absolutely. And the layers are deep too. So if we take that same example of someone who maybe loses their job, and that creates a strain on them. If they are also then maybe connected to a peer-to-peer group where they can talk to other folks and be like, oh, I lost my job last year. And now they know they're not alone there. They see that there's other paths. They have a connection. So maybe even not finding them a new job, just giving them that connection.
Great point.
And if we talk about connection, that's peer-to-peer groups. Those are events celebrating veteran communities, getting folks together, introducing caregivers to caregivers, family members to family members, having opportunities for veterans and their families to interact with other families and with the community in general, just so they know that they're a part of something. And that's eliminating that feeling of isolation.
And adding the caregivers was important because we've learned in our work in this area that the work of a caregiver is incredibly challenging and can be incredibly stressful, and that there's actually a significant amount of suicide amongst caregivers.
Absolutely. And when we think about our caregivers and our family members, when we talk about suicide prevention and we talk about interacting with those folks, it's not for the veteran, it's for themselves as much as anything. So it's, there is strain on caregivers, there is strain on family members. So we want to make sure that we're connecting and interacting with them in every way that we can. And that connection, that upstream prevention is that second priority, is what we look for. The third priority of ways that we're looking for folks to get out there and work, whether it's locally, regionally, or statewide, with these grant opportunities is the third party group, which is lethal means, storage, and safety. So veterans are more likely than the general population to utilize a firearm in a suicide attempt. So we want to make sure that we're promoting safe handling and safe storage of firearms. We want to make sure that people understand ideations and how to just safely take care of themselves and their family when there's firearms in the home. So that's really important as well. So these are the priority groups set by the Governor's Challenge, which was a presidential challenge across the nation. All the states are involved and territories, which is really great. It's great. We get great support from our federal partners, and we're working with a lot of great organizations. But these three priority groups of identifying and screening, curating connection, and then lethal means, storage, and safety are areas that folks can look at for either of these grants. It's suicide prevention. And like we said, the Governor's Challenge nonprofit grant opportunities are covering those family members and caregivers, service members and veterans, whereas grants for veteran services is service directly to veterans. So those are the three priority groups that we are looking for, and just to kind of hit a few more little pieces for both as well. When we look at suicide prevention, the vention part really is a key word, key partial word, because we look at three areas on that, and we look at prevention, which is preventative efforts. When we're talking about that upstream prevention, what can we do to interact with communities, make sure people know all of their services, their resources, help communities identify where maybe they need more access to mental health opportunities, and promote mental health fitness and wellness for folks. So we look at prevention. The other one is intervention, and that's crisis intervention. So one of the things that's very proven to work well is crisis intervention teams. So individual communities to have a crisis intervention team set up. They know who to call and where to go and how to make those calls. And one of the things that's works really great in that is peer activity. So if there's a veteran in crisis and there are first responders who come, if one of those first responders is a veteran, there's a better connection there.
Oh, that's great.
And that can work for caregivers and family members as well. So setting up crisis intervention teams, having crisis intervention process is something we can help communities and nonprofits kind of develop and grow with. And then that third one vitally important is what's called post-vention. That's in the unfortunate case where a suicide is successfully carried out. It's the immediate care and surrounding of that family that's left over. One suicide can affect over 100 people in the community. And what these post-vention teams can do is interact sometimes on site with the family. Provide the right services, the right communication. If there's children or other folks in the house, they're making sure they're taking care of them the right way and interacting with them right away. It helps to alleviate some of that stress. Like I said, it can radiate outward from there to the whole community. And it's really just giving that opportunity for, sometimes there can be a cumulative effect when there's a suicide. So it's so important to work with that immediate surrounding group of family members and friends and get that post-vention work going. So we have great opportunities for people that we can help out, but we want communities to know about prevention, intervention, and post-vention. Provide them these great grant opportunities for nonprofits to start getting this work going, either improving it where it's going happening, expanding, or creating it in some communities.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Joe. So, again, on the priority areas, Joe did a wonderful job talking about priority area number 6, but the 5 that we have always had still are in effect: preventing homelessness, preventing near-term homelessness, assisting veterans in moving from public housing assistance programs to stable long-term housing, assisting veterans in finding and using available federal and state resources, providing therapeutic services, and providing job training and job search assistance. All 6 are perfectly viable areas that you could apply for, and they could even overlap. You could be providing therapeutic services, which also prevents veteran suicide. So they do not need to necessarily stand alone. Moving on the application, just be mindful that on page 6 highlights the areas that you need to submit documentation for along with your digital application. Again, all of the documentation will be submitted virtually through the digital platform. Page 7, always important, allowable and unallowable costs. These are not all-inclusive lists. These are the commonly identified areas for allowable and unallowable costs, but please, especially on the allowable, don't feel stymied that you have to use only those that are on the list. Feel free to be creative. We can always have a conversation about the allowability of expenses you'd like to be reimbursed for. On reporting, there is fiscal and programmatic reporting requirements. You could do those either monthly or quarterly. We recognize that especially smaller nonprofits might struggle waiting for a quarterly reimbursement. And so we do have a monthly option. But please note that if you are awarded a grant, that you will have to choose whether you're monthly or quarterly at the beginning of the grant cycle, and then that choice will live throughout the grant cycle. We will provide all those who are awarded grants with a document that we fondly call the workbook, and the workbook will be tailored to your organization and your grant, and will have formulas in it specific to your grant line item amounts. And then there will be tabs for the fiscal reporting and a tab for the programmatic reporting as well. Those are the highlights of the grant solicitation that we wanted to draw everyone's attention to today. Obviously, we would love everyone to read in detail the whole solicitation because it is full of information that you should know before you apply. So with that, why don't we see what questions we have available for us?
Let's see what we got. I do want to say really quick, big thank you to Salon Osborne. She's off screen right now, but she's making this happen with our technology and opportunity. So
we certainly could not do it without.
No, we couldn't.
So thank you for pointing that out. All right, we are waiting for some questions.
Bring them on.
Someone has to be first.
Somebody does. I'll fill some dead air while we're waiting too. And let folks know to be creative. with your solicitations. It was some creative discussion where we helped one grant recipient a few years back, realize that the funding that they had received for other federal programming couldn't help National Guard folks, but ours could.
Yes.
So it kind of opened this whole opportunity where, feel free to use us maybe as a gap filler. And if there's certain things you're unable to do. Here we go.
Would you like to read the first one?
Is postvention, prevention for family and friends, or grief recovery counseling, or both. So, yes. How's that? Joseph, so yes, so the recovery counseling, which is is the postvention. Yes, and if we look at, we were talking a bit earlier, there are currently 2 solicitations available on our website. From the homepage, you'll see grant opportunities. We're talking about the GVS.
Yes, we are.
Today, this particular grant, GVS, Grants for Veteran Services, is for veterans program.
Yes.
Our other one that is open until the 17th of April, I have it here, let me double check. Yes, so we also have another solicitation on the website right now, which is our Indiana Governor's Challenge Priority Group Grant Opportunity, which is up, but applications must be in by 5 p.m. on the 17th of April.
And that is Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern.
We recognize that not all of Indiana is on the same time zone, so we always make sure to let it be known that that's Eastern Standard Time.
Well done. And so that solicitation does have the opportunity for programming for family members and caregivers, as well as veterans and service members. So, but yes, so the prevention, intervention, and postvention is for family members and friends under that, and that counseling and postvention is really, it's really proven to be a massive support for our community, and it's a really great not only recovery setup, but it's also prevention method in some ways as well. I hope I answered that question.
If you did not, hopefully Joseph will let us know that he'd like further explanation.
That's right, from Joseph to Joseph.
Yeah. All right, other questions? Please don't be shy. We love being able to answer your questions now so that you can then submit the best grant application that your organization can submit.
Right on. So I'm going to keep filling air.
Okay.
That's what I do.
I know.
Salon says I talk a lot.
That's one of the many reasons I invite you to join me, Joe.
So one of the things is, okay, good. Right on, Joseph. One thing to think about too when you're considering opportunities to help the community for veterans, not just in the suicide prevention realm, but in all the ways of our grants, opportunities in both of these grant opportunities. They always say, what we've noticed is transition is one of the most stressful times for veterans and their families. And when we say transition, the first thought is transition from service to being a civilian. And that 1 year, that first year is very stressful, and it's very risky opportunity for veterans and families. But if we think about it, being such a big National Guard state, we have folks in the National Guard right now and their families who are transitioning 24 times a year. So they got to go, they're going to drill, and then they got to come home. So that's a transition. That's a stress on a family. That's a stress on the veteran as well, with their employment and in many ways. So that's a transitional period. And then also if we think about the stress of transition coming out of the service to civilianhood, even if someone's been out and been a veteran for many years, and they go into a transition, especially an unexpected one, that can bring back a lot of the original stress from that transition that may have not been worked through and stuff. So transition is a great way to look at services and stuff for folks to be provided.
Okay, we have another question. Are these grant opportunities for nonprofit businesses only? The answer is yes. The Indiana Code requires that you must be a nonprofit organization recognized by the IRS in order to be eligible to receive a grant. So we could not grant funds to any organization that was not recognized as a nonprofit. A question that we had in our Q&A for the Governor's Challenge nonprofit grant opportunity last week was, what if your application is still pending? The answer that we gave last week was, if your application to become a nonprofit is still pending with the IRS, go ahead and apply, but recognize that until you achieve that status and can document it, we would be unable to fully execute the grant agreement, which in other terms means we would not be able to offer any reimbursement to that organization because they have not complied with the requirements of the code. But we could score their application, we could provisionally grant them an award awaiting that nonprofit recognition.
Right on. That's a great question, Shanda. And on that, if you're in the initial phases or not a nonprofit, you've got some great ideas that you're swirling around in your head right now. It's a good opportunity to look around your community and even statewide at some nonprofits that are out there now. And you can partner with them or present these opportunities to them. If someone was looking to know about nonprofits in their community or statewide, do you have any tips on how they can look for those?
Well, the first thing I would always do is go to the IDVA website, where there is always a wealth of information about anything veteran that I would want to know. So that would be my first resource that I would go to see what was available on our website here at IDVA.
Right on. That's a great idea.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Oh, Joseph's back. He's got another great question.
Oh, good. Thank you, Joseph. Can we apply for both grants since we serve both veterans and veteran suicide prevention? Yes, you can apply for both grant opportunities. The one that Joe talked so much about, that is going to close on April 17th. And then this opportunity for the grants for veteran services that we're talking about today, which closes on May 15th. Obviously, they will have to be separate applications with separate budgets, but you can certainly apply for both, no problem at all. So Joseph said we have also served 251 service and support dogs so far. So that's a great fact. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's a great opportunity for 251 veterans and their families to have that companion with them.
Right on. And Joseph, I'm gonna shamelessly plug something while we're here on the YouTube's live. But with what you're saying in your organization, I wanted to make sure we have a great partner called Leon's Heroes. And they do two great events up in northwest Indiana, up in the Lake County area. And there's going on since the 80s, a triathlon, a military disabled triathlon. And it's just a huge event that they have up there. And then this will be the third or fourth year, maybe the third year, where they've added, and that's in June, and in September, they've added an obstacle course race through the Indiana Dunes, which is really cool too. And what I wanted to let you know is both events are nationally leading and one of the only ones that have full events for service dogs. So veterans and other folks can compete. They have different classes and setups for service dogs through the obstacle course, the triathlon. So it is a massively canine friendly environment and opportunity, and even for participation for the dogs to be in the events and stuff. So it's really cool. Leon's Heroes, do the Googles on that. You'll find his website and are on there, a lot of information, but I just wanted to pass that along to and let the whole canine community know that this is a welcoming opportunity for them to participate.
Thank you, Joe. What a wonderful example of one of our veteran partners, veteran organization partners doing things that are unique. And that comes back to what you were saying earlier in your comments, that don't feel as if you just have to submit your grant application. What is the norm in these areas? That creativity can certainly be awarded a grant.
It sure
We have-
can.
We have seen that in years, many years.
And for instance, too, I mean, unfortunately, we can't grant to everybody.
No, that would be lovely.
Which we would love to. And we do get a good bunch of grant recipients, but there are some in the past, Leon in particular, where we didn't get a grant, but it's also by submitting the application, you're getting into our system.
Yes,
You're getting into our wealth of knowledge that we can spread to other nonprofits and other opportunities. So we want to know who you are, what you're doing out there for the Indiana veteran community. Whether or not you get the grant, it's still great for us to get you in that pipeline of communication when we do emails and other blasts about different information. You know, if you've been in here, we'll have your stuff and you'll be on our list. So we want to know who you are and what you're doing.
speaking of knowing what's going on here at IDVA and our different opportunities, could you speak in your capacity as outreach director about the things we have, such as the newsletter and our social media
I would love
opportunities?
to talk about that.
While we're waiting for another question.
Right on. So Salon has posted our website, as you can see right there. Oh, and Leon's, thank you very much. So we've got some stuff up there. And if you go to our website, you'll see some great opportunities to connect with us. We have a little menu button on the top left. You can find a lot of things in there. There are also buttons as you scroll.
Mhm.
But really, a couple of the most important things to know are, we have one on there on the menu called Submit a Veteran Event. And what we want to do is make sure that you folks tell us about stuff that's happening. So we want to know what's happening across the state in every community. If it's in any way, shape, or form, an event for the veteran community, we would love to know about it. And we helped develop this tool where Salon developed this great tool where you go into submit a veteran event and you just give us the details we want. It's a fillable form online. You can upload some of your graphics or what you have for your event. And really, that's the way to do it because that puts it in our pipeline.
Yes.
So now we have everything we need to know for our newsletter, for our social media posts, for our email blasts, for every way we could do to promote the event. It gives us the details we would like to see. Hey, is this an opportunity for us to go there? Set up a table, be involved, interact. So that's the direct way. You can let one of us know, but that's hit or miss in some ways. I hate to say that, but this is the way to get it right into that pipeline. So any events that you know of in your community, direct folks to that or look for that Submit a Veteran Event page. Salon's put some of these great links up there. She put the newsroom up there as well. You can see that's our newsletter. We got a massive newsletter list, and we have like a 50% open rate, which I will tell everybody because that's a great open rate.
That is.
So once again, great way to find out what's happening across the state, take a look at the newsletter, and it's a great opportunity to let us know about things that we want to report on or put in our newsletter. So another opportunity there to connect with us. And the last thing I'll hit on when we got a few minutes is we also have another great program called the Event Sponsorship Program, which is a way that we can help sponsor events across the state that celebrate or honor the veteran community. We'll sponsor up to $500 to the event. It has to be a nonprofit that applies. They can apply once a year, but if it's an event anywhere in the state that's celebrating and honoring the veteran community, it's free and open to the public. We want to help sponsor that event. That application is up there. I think Salon will have the link up there in about 4 more seconds, and you can look at that as well. I think we have another question.
I think we do.
Right on.
Thank you. Oh, before we move to the question, real quick, social media, or like if I had Facebook, could I like IDVA and have them as a friend? How would the social media aspect work? And then we'll-
You sure can. You can always go to our pages, which you can find on our website as well. Or what's our keyword, Salon? Veterans Indiana. That's the keywords. Find us on our social media sites, which we're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and
obviously
LinkedIn.
YouTube.
LinkedIn
And
and
obviously
YouTube.
YouTube as a platform as well for us.
And anyone who's not joined our YouTube page, please do so.
Yes, we will.
Before we even get off the call.
Yes.
Get on there.
We will be,
Join this
we will be
page.
watching to
There's
see.
some big things coming on our YouTube page in the coming years, so you definitely want to make sure you're subscribed to that.
Yes, you don't want to
for
miss
sure.
out.
Yes.
All right, so we have a question. Can you speak briefly on the eligibility criteria? And then it says registration with the Indiana Secretary of State. So the Indiana Secretary of State is a requirement. It's in the Indiana code, so it's not an IDVA requirement. It is a state of Indiana requirement. If you're going to do any procurement, any contracting, any grant opportunity with any of the state agencies that comprise the state of Indiana government, you have to be registered with the Indiana Secretary of State. It is told to us that it is a relatively painless experience and that it costs just a nominal fee. You can do the registration process online and it will walk you through very nicely how to do it. But if you are not registered with the Indiana Secretary of State, we cannot grant you money. If, like with the 501c3 nonprofit recognition from the IRS, if the registration is pending at the time you apply, just indicate on your application that that is pending, and we will continue to score your application. But like I stated previously, with the nonprofit status, we cannot actually fully execute the grant agreement and reimburse you funds until you're registered with the Secretary of State. As far as to some of the other eligibility criteria, we've already talked at length about the requirement to be a nonprofit. You have to serve the veterans of Indiana. They are required to be veterans of Indiana. And then you must be financially able to provide the services that you propose and to administer these grant funds. We do engage in compliance monitoring throughout the life of the grant and after the grant closes. So you do need to have an acceptable accounting system to be able to administer the funds granted to you. You can't just throw them all in one big account along with donations from your fundraiser and just write checks out of the account. That would not be deemed an acceptable accounting system. So you do need to have an acceptable accounting system to administer these funds. With that said, it doesn't mean that you need to have $1 million accounting system or an in-house accountant. It could be something as simple as QuickBooks or a Quicken product, but it needs to be a recognized system that you can use and do use to administer these funds. The other requirement is that you're free of debt to the state and federal government. So we at times will see where an organization owes monies to the Department of Revenue or the Indiana Department of Workforce Development. Those will be checked during the grant process. And so if you do owe any funds or forms or reports to any state or federal organization, we cannot execute the grant agreement until that is remedied. So it does not mean you won't be scored and you could even receive your award letter, but that grant agreement will not be able to be fully executed if you do have any of those liabilities, including forms or reports.
Really, our goal is to partner with nonprofits to provide some great services and programming and opportunities for Indiana veterans. We're only going to work with the squared away folks.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
That is what I'm saying, yes. I said it in a lot more words, but yes, that is what I'm saying.
All right. Looks, Joseph's, he did it. It was $41. So I guess he's talking about registering with the Secretary of State.
That's what I see. And $41 to me seems like a reasonable price to be in compliance with the laws of the state of Indiana.
Absolutely.
All right, we'd love some other questions. As you all know, this is a Q&A session, so we are looking for questions, and we've provided highlights of the grant solicitation. We've provided a wealth of information, thank you, Joe, about preventing veteran suicide efforts, our social media, our newsletter, the ESP program, our calendar for veterans events, which is a wonderful addition to our website. But if no one else has any questions, we will say goodbye to everyone for today. So let's take this opportunity to ask any outlying questions that anyone has. And then you will have a second opportunity for a Q&A on this GBS grant. And that is May 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time through the same platform that we're having this today. Well, certainly you are all very welcome for providing answers and background. Let's give it one more. Oh, here we go. Grant period performance start date for suicide prevention is May 1st. Is there an end date? So this is a question in reference to the grant opportunity Joe talked about, which is our Governor's Challenge nonprofit grant opportunity. The period of performance, as correctly noted in the question, is May 1st of 2024, so right around the corner.
Correct.
Yes, we'll be getting those grant agreements done as quickly as possible. So May 1st is the start date. The end date for that period of performance is then the end of the next fiscal year. So that would be June 30th of 2025. So that is a 14-month grant opportunity. Opposed to the one we're talking about today, that is contemporaneous with the state fiscal year. It will start July 1st of 2024 and run to the end of the state fiscal year, June 30th, 2025. Any other questions? We'd love to see them.
I think we've done it.
I think we have answered all the questions we're going to get asked today. If you have questions and you do not want to wait to the May 1st opportunity for the second Q&A session, on page 2 of the grant solicitation is my contact information, along with our grant and compliance administrator, Brooklyn Deaton. Our contact information, our both email address and phone number is on there. Feel free to reach out to us. Please note with those questions that we can answer any questions regarding the grant process, due dates, submission, things like that. But obviously from a conflict of interest standpoint or giving anyone a competitive advantage, we can't speak to specifics about your grant or your program. We in the past have had organizations who want to tell us about their grant and have us write their application. Obviously, we will not be doing that. We also can't answer any questions about your specific program. So if Joe called me and said, hey, I want to tell you about my program and how it runs intimately, then can you tell me if that would be a good candidate for a grant? Obviously, it would put all of you at an unfair advantage if we provided that feedback to Joe.
Mm-hmm.
All questions should be addressed either to myself or to Brooklyn regarding the grant. If you have questions about veteran suicide prevention efforts, feel free to reach out to Joe and his team. Their contact is all on our website. But if you do have any questions about the grant, we'd love it if you could direct those to myself and Brooklyn, because we're in the best position to handle those, where Joe is in the best position to handle programmatic questions. If you get that confused and you ask Joe a grant question, me a program question, Joe and I are about 2 offices apart.
Yes.
I will give him the programmatic question
make that connection.
and he will give me the grant specific question. With that, since there are no more questions today, everybody have a great rest of your day and a wonderful upcoming afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.